Hello guys. Actually, in my free time, I like to read some kind of inspirational book by inspirational writer and listen to music while I'm reading it. So I decided this time I'd read What I Believe by Bertrand Russell, and I'll read it loud on a video to share my thoughts, share Bertrand Russell's beliefs about human and life, okay? And I hope it will be light on your hearts, okay? So let's start. Uh, okay, here's a preface. He says, in this little book, I have tried to say what I think of man's place in the universe and of his possibilities in the way of achieving the good life. In Icarus, I expressed my fears. In the following pages, I have expressed my hopes. The inconsistency is only apparent. Except in astronomy, mankind have not achieved the art of predicting the future. In human affairs, we can see that there are forces making for happiness and forces making for misery. We do not know which will prevail, but to act wisely, we must be aware of both. Well, such a good preface, preface should be like uh, an abstract of the book of he will be talking about, and considering it a philosophical book. Uh, uh, it's so hard to say how good a preface is in a philosophical book, as Hegel said, but he gave us a little pinch of what he will talk about in this book. Okay, I mean, the matter of man's place in the universe uh, is a big deal in our lives. We need to think of our place in the universe, really. Here are the contents of the book: Nature and Man, The Good Life, Moral Rules, Salvation and Individual, Salvation, Individual and Social, Science and Happiness. Quite interesting topics. Here is chapter 1: Nature and Man. Well, man is a part of nature, not something contrasted with nature. His thoughts and his bodily movements follow the same laws that describe in the motion of stars and atoms. The physical world is large compared with man, larger than it was thought to be in Dante's time, right? But not so large, so it seemed 100 years ago. Both upward and downward, both in large and in small, science seems to be reaching the limits. It thought it is thought that the universe is of finite extent in space, and that light could travel round in a few hundred millions of years. It thought that matter consists of electrons and protons, which are of finite size, and of which there are only a finite number in the world. Probably their changes are not continuous, as used to be thought, but proceed by jerks which are never smaller than a certain minimum jerk. The laws the laws of these changes can apparently be summed up a small number of very general principles, which determine the past, the future of the world, and the future of the world, where any small section of its history is known. Physical science is thus approaching the stage when it will be complete and therefore uninteresting. Given the laws governing the motions of electrons and protons, the rest is merely geography, a collection of particular facts telling distribution throughout some portion of the world's history. The total number of facts of geography required to determine the world's history is probably finite. Well, he's talking here about science and how it makes us predict the future and know the past. And he says that now the world is bigger than we thought it was in Dante's time. Now we know protons, electrons, and how finite are they. We know the changes that happens to them. We summed up almost all of the interesting things in science and kind of equations that applies for almost everything. Small particles, large particles, even humans, right? Let's continue. Theoretically, they could all be written down in a big book to be kept at Somerset House, which with a calculating machine attached, which by turning a handle would enable the inquirer to find out the facts at the other times than those recorded. It's difficult to imagine anything less interesting or more different from the passionate delights of incomplete discovery. It's like climbing a high mountain and finding nothing at the top except restaurant where they sell ginger beer, surrounded by fog but equipped with wireless. Perhaps in the times of arms, the multiplication table was exciting, right? Of this physical world, and interesting in itself, man is a part, right? His body, like the matter, is composed of electrons and protons, part of the universe. Universe is composed of electrons, protons, etc. We're, we're composed of electrons and protons as well, which so far as we know obey the same laws as those not forming part of animals or plants. There are some there are some who maintain that physiology can never be reduced to physics. But their arguments are not very convincing, and it seems prudent to suppose that they are mistaken. What we call our thoughts seem to depend upon the organization of tracks in the brain in the same sort of way in which journeys depend upon roads and rails. Okay, the energy used in thinking seems to have a chemical origin. For instance, the deficiency of iodine will turn a clever man into an idiot. And this is quite right to me. I think everything we think of, the way the way we receive or we perceive things, it's all chemical. Even our mood, okay? Our mood depends on chemical reactions or whatever, but it's all chemical. There is nothing, spiritual or you would say you are gifted by being smart or whatever. It's so genetic, yeah, but in let's say chemical way or a real matter, a real thing. It's a subject that causes you to be smart, right? Not some kind of cognition or whatever. No, it's as Russell says, a small deficiency of iodine will turn a clever man into an idiot. And it's quite interesting, actually. Well, mental phenomena seem to be bound up with material structure. If this be so, we cannot suppose that a solitary electron or proton can think. Quite, quite good. Yeah, it's quite an argument. If we all composed of electrons and protons, and a proton and an other electron can think, so it's not the we all have the same ability. It's just some chemicals in our brain or on our body that that makes us do so. It makes us do so. We also cannot suppose that that an individual's thinking survives bodily death. Nice. Okay, quite interesting. Since that destroys the organization of the brain and dissipates the energy which utilizes the brain tracks. Convincing, actually. Another. Well, let's stop right here. Okay, and continue in another video.